Thanks, Jade. Well, in that case, then maybe we kick things off. I'm sure people are going to be rolling in as we come along, but we've already got a good group here, so we might as well start. So, hello everyone. I'm Tim. I just wanted to say thanks to RecWorks and CTO London Group for letting me along and to host this for you. I'm looking forward to a nice in-depth. We've got an hour, a nice in-depth discussion around growing pains for mobile teams. What to expect? We're going to have, I've got questions lined up. We've also got a few questions that people submitted during sign up, which is awesome. Thank you. And then as you go along, if you do have any other questions you want to pose, please pop them in the chat and we'll aim to try and cover them. Now, I am pretty certain we're not going to cover all the questions during this time. So what we're going to aim to do is we're going to keep track of them. And then Jess, who's also on this call, Jess, if you want to have a little wave. She is, excellent. She's going to then follow up with some of the questions, and we're likely to potentially put them in the Slack group and have more of a Slack roundtable as well. So if you do have anything burning that you want to ask or be answered, or something that didn't get answered, or you want to dive into a bit more, we will have more chance. But hopefully it's going to be a nice opportunity just to chat around on this. I think what we'll do is we'll try to use the hand up feature as much as we can. And we'll dig into a topic. If we're sort of getting to the end of it, might move us on and pose another question. Or if there is a lull in conversation, I might ask someone directly. But if you'd rather watch than participate, that's absolutely fine. And we can move on to someone else. You are welcome to be as active or as inactive as you would like. Topic-wise, we're talking about growing pains for mobile teams. Mobile tech has become an essential part of our lives, and as businesses continue to embrace mobile-first strategies, the role of mobile teams has become increasingly critical. With this growth comes lots of challenges. That could be managing the mobile teams, it could be scaling the mobile product, scaling the mobile team. And yeah, we're here to sort of talk around the topic of what those challenges are. And hopefully it might be useful to some of you. So I expect we're going to cover communication between different teams, management of underlying systems, securing APIs, API security, protecting sensitive data, DevOps around those kind of practices. So who sees where we'll go? We'll find out. First question then, open up to the floor. What challenges do you face with communication between mobile and other teams, and what strategies can be used to improve collaboration? Who wants to kick us off with thoughts around that?
Sure, I can start. Hello there. For this time, I'm Nicole here. Just for a little bit of context, I've been managing mobile teams for a couple of years already. And one of the main pains that I have noticed communication-wise is mostly with design and the Android team specifically. That's one of the main pain points that I keep coming up. And also when the teams are separate, like we don't have a multi-dimensional like team, like you only have like mobile teams, for example. They lack a little bit of the context of the roadmap of other teams. Like, for example, like they're not sure like services are there before they're going to be starting working on some feature, or the required changes or something. They sometimes get a bit lost between the services if the team that owns a mobile team don't own also those services. Those are kind of the two big topics that I keep like popping up, at least on my teams. Like this backend, front-end communication, and also this design Android specifically, because most designs are iOS. So they get a lot of confusion in there as well. Now for the side of how we minimize the impact of that, the most important one in my book is the backend front-end part, and that's involving the mobile teams in the planning step of the services too. Like, maybe have a small round of kickoff in remote on that, and just like go over the whole feature and go over the whole like data journey. That's how we call it. so everyone is aware of what is happening there. But yeah, that's at least in my experience, that's one of the big ones that has been popping up.
Great, thank you. Has anyone else here got an idea of strategies of tackling that kind of isolation of the mobile team? You talked about not having context of the roadmap, and them being separate from design, from the services as well. Has anyone here got an idea of ways of tackling that? Stephen, I can see your hand up.
Hello, yep, Stephen Rooke, CTO at Thrive. I did have the problem you've just described, and essentially I've disbanded my mobile team, and just because everyone else were full stack teams, taking care of front end, back end, and everything in between. Now our mobile apps are all in React Native, so we're relatively okay there, and I've got a lot of React developers in the squads anyway, so I just made them do it, and it gets away from the problem, like career opportunity, upskilling, and I've created a mobile community of practice. So I've got a head of mobile still who looks at standards across all squads and making sure that we're all doing the right things, implementing whatever. So somebody responsible for Sentry and Bitrise, for the pipelines and builds and things like that, and then. The problem's gone away really, because now it used to be that we'd develop for the platform, and then it'd be, oh, and what about mobile? Oh, and what about, it's always an afterthought. So now it's all, it's the squads are accountable up front, and it takes away a number of those problems. I mean, it's not to say that it doesn't introduce other problems, but the engagement and afterthought have helped a lot.
Interesting. Thank you, Stephen. Ben, I saw your hand come up.
I'm going to say, so hi, I'm Ben, technical leader at Novoda. I 100% behind if you can get away with having a multifunctional teams and having mobile as part of your verticals. It's always going to be so much easier. You're working as a single team. Everything is a lot simpler that way. But that's not saying that you can't have better integration, even if you have to have a separate mobile team. One way that we've achieved that in the past is, with regards to the vision, is making sure that you do have stakeholders involved with the mobile team and bringing them on to understanding what that roadmap is. It was actually, even the developers were really looking forward to having those meetings and understanding that roadmap. And then for the design part, we had we were bringing designers working with the mobile team a few steps along the way. So we had, like, early on, developers would be involved with the designers in the brainstorming sessions when things were starting to get working. And then we would also bring designers as part of the review process. So we introduced access for our designers to GitHub and the PRs. And we had a full system where we would actually have screenshots as part of the PR review. Designers would be able to put comments, and you had a bit of a back and forth and kind of pairing experience to a certain degree with developers and designers, and that helped a lot in making that communication a bit more fluid. So that could be an idea.
Great, thanks, Ben. John.
Yeah, hi there, John, Director of Software for Solar Protect, and very much echoing Stephen and Ben there. I joined this company about a year ago, inherited a horrible fragmented technology landscape across web devices, mobile apps, and I'm embarking upon a strategy of trying to do some standardization and consistency across those landscapes using more of the horizontal model that Stephen alluded to. And the current mobile app is built in Xamarin, whereas we've just launched some new products and devices to the market a few months ago that's built in Kotlin. And so that's continued this inconsistency and fragmentation, and that's where I've got the mobile app team in comparison to the web and devices and kind of firmware engineering team isolated, or they feel a sense of isolation. So when we move towards a more native-based language, preferably Kotlin, because that will then fall in line with our devices, it will harmonize and bring that team more closely aligned and a bit more collaborative. So that's my intention. But what we try and do at the moment to improve that cohesion and collaboration across the teams is as part of their personal and professional development growth is, attend webinars and courses and whatnot. And we have this thing called lightning talks, where we try and get the guys to have an opportunity to do some knowledge sharing. And that's all part of their upskilling, just to bring the development teams closer together on a bi-weekly or monthly basis, as a way to then move us forward to be a bit more joined up in the future when we address a fragmented technology landscape.
It's interesting. So it looks like, from what we said, there's ways to improve cohesion. One's around like tech choices. You can do stuff like choosing something that fits into the stack better so that it can be more connected. Ben talks about processes or practices, like make sure you're linking with designers more often, bring them into meetings. And then John, you talk about sort of growth and learning and culture that can help cohesion as well. And that's some of the nice 3 key areas that helps with it. Very interesting. Is there any other comments on sort of the challenges people face around communication and perhaps strategies? Or I'll leave that for a moment, then perhaps move on to another question. Great. Okay, question number 2. How do you approach the management of underlying systems for mobile applications to optimize performance and scalability? I'll pop the question in the chat as well. On Ben.
I guess this is just more asking for a clarification. I'm not exactly sure what like the underlying system means. I'm not exactly sure how to contribute to the question.
I guess this means more about answer. We've got another hand up. Perhaps you can elaborate for us. Qaiser, sorry if that's pronounced.
Yeah, hi, Qaiser. It wasn't my question, but I'll share my kind of understanding. I can share my thoughts as well, if that's okay. So my understanding of the underlying systems are the back-end systems, so the server side that deals with the requests from the mobile app. My kind of thoughts around how we manage them to scale and support our mobile apps is the same way that we manage our services for front-end web apps as well. So, as we've kind of moved away from, and obviously not everyone has, but Voucher, so I'm a CTO at Voucher, as we've moved away from monolithic applications and you have potentially a microservices backend and then a separate front end, we treat our front ends as equals. So our native iOS app, our native Android app, and our React front end on web, they are all clients of our services, and they all pretty much behave in very similar ways. So in terms of scaling and how do you support those services, it's the same way that you would support a regular web app. So we are 100% in the cloud, and so we right size our services, and we support RESTful interactions with our service. So you don't need to hold context, or you don't need to hold transactions and things like that. And that way you can spin up as many services as you want and spin them down. So we have Black Friday, for example, where we've got lots and lots of traffic. Or when we send out email sends, we've got lots of people rushing to Voucher to try and buy our deals. So being able to support those parts, but then scaling down when it's the middle of the night. We're a UK site only, so we're not overly specced and burning cash when we don't need to.
Great, thanks. Benjamin.
Thanks for the clarification. I think one thing that might be interesting to bring to the discussion then when we talk about management of like backend services for mobile is how sometimes there may be a mismatch on how the services function. One of the very common thing that we've seen is the reliance on, especially as you have more kind of microservices and like kind of fragmented setup, of having the need for like multiple API calls to reconstitute the data that you need for a single page. Well, on web, it might not be usually a problem. On mobile, the implication of doing multiple API calls can be quite drastic in terms of performance, specifically depending on devices. So that's usually a thing that might be to take into consideration. We've had to do in the past, depending on the requirements, to introduce backend for front end, kind of like an intermediate layer that is able to simplify the consumption of microservices into a designated API for mobile. That's not always the best course, but if you really have specific requirements, that can be useful. An example that we have was for consuming newspaper, so consuming media, and we wanted to have like regular caching of that data available offline. Obviously, you probably don't want your 1 million+ users hitting your API endpoint all at the same time every single day in the morning. So having a way of like pre-processing that data, caching it ahead of time, and deliver it was absolutely key to make sure that your services didn't go down. So I guess in addition to what you mentioned, is just this idea of, do you consume it exactly in the same way? Are there specificities to mobile? And if so, maybe you need to introduce something to simplify that consumption.
Great. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Qaiser. A question from one of you that submitted before, a question from Ian Woods, actually. How has mobile development evolved over the last 3 to 4 years from your perspectives? Go on, Nicole, over to you.
Sure, I can jump in. I'll say like it's been a ride. It's interesting to see how different patterns keep changing, and not only in the past years. Like there are sometimes that in the past months, a new technology popped in and basically changes the game. I've seen the ride pass from like starting with like native, then going to like multi-platform again, then going to native again, and now it's a push again for having this multi-platform thing, which is really interesting to see. Like right now we're looking for like mobile developers that know how to use these multi-platform technologies, or even that have a more full stacky profile, because we only like right now we're not only looking for someone that does the app, but also like understands the whole thing, or they can do like multiple applications or multiple things in the same company. At least in my experience, that has been something that has changed a lot. Like I remember a couple of years that we were looking just for like specific Android or iOS developers that we still see around. But in most of this startup like environment, we're looking for more basically. And that's interesting. And even if the people don't know it, we want like that drive that they want to learn something else, and that's totally okay.
So other than also like, so Nicole, just question back to you as well. So obviously there's like a wider skill set as well. Does that come with a different attitude as well that you're looking for?
Yeah, totally. Like, as I was mentioning, like, it's not only the thing that they know about doing these things, it's just like they have the drive and they like doing those things. Because if there's someone that doesn't like to do multiple things, it's totally okay. There are still jobs for that. But we're looking for someone that is more like eager or open to explore different things and to basically learn on the go as well.
Interesting. That actually signposts towards another question that John actually submitted around how do you maintain motivation and inspiration for mobile teams, especially when looking at the balance of personal growth, commercial gain for the company, professional growth. Like, how do you get that balance when you say yourself that mobile, the world of mobile changed so drastically in 3 to 4 years? So yeah, how would you tackle that and maintain motivation, inspiration within that?
I guess that's a question. It's a matter of like different contexts, and that's on my experience. It has a lot to do on what the company has to offer and what the paths of each engineer are. Like, if we find that sweet spot where we can align whatever the engineers want and whatever the company needs and try to like match it as much as we can, I think that's great. And even if there's no like a lot of touch points between those, if there's this understanding and this kind of trade-off, like, yeah, probably we're going to wait until like development of this several topics, like a couple of months, but really fulfilling those promises, so to say, and really creating a development plan with the people helps a lot. Like probably you cannot promise everything they want, but if you can, like, again, work together with them and have this development plan in place, that helps a lot with motivation in my experience. Like then knowing where they're going to go and knowing that you have their back, it's really, really a huge impact on motivation. At least in my experience, it has worked really well.
Go on, John.
Yeah, the question around how mobile app has evolved is a great one. I go back to the point where, you know, so many years ago, we didn't have the technology choices available that we do now. We had different challenges and different complications, but now we're faced with such an abundance of choice. It's then how do you govern that choice to make sure it's you get the right balance for the individuals, the team, the company, around fiscal responsibilities as well. And that's the challenges we're facing right now, which is I've inherited this technology landscape. I don't have a bottomless pit of money in my software budget, yet the product commercial pressures and strategies are very ambitious. So trying to balance all those is really tricky. But to Nicole's point, this is where I'm working more on getting some standardization, because I've thankfully got a very good team, ironically, of guys who are working in the Azure space and .NET Core. Guess what? They're interested in Kotlin. They're interested in React. And I'm getting the guys on the mobile app side saying, we want to be part of what these guys are doing in Azure, how we're decomposing a monolithic architecture into an API-led microservices. So I've got this horizontal cross skills, which is good from an individual perspective, but it's then challenging around trying to communicate that to the powers that be, you know, around how does that look like from a deliverer perspective for our Q1, 2, 3, 4 objectives. So it's difficult.
John, just a question back to you then. Like, in terms of like that excitement of the new technologies or wanting to learn is a really awesome thing to have within your team. But how do you navigate that if it's not necessarily the right choice for the product to go down, or even how do you even have that conversation with them?
Ironically, I'm in a 2-day strategic sessions tomorrow and Friday exactly on that. Thankfully, and whilst sales, marketing, and the business strategy are racing away with a product roadmap which simply has no consideration for the technical, that's where I'm there to tell them the hard fact truths around, well, I applaud where you're going from a business perspective, but here's where you realistically are technically. And so this is what we need to address before we get to that point. I'll let you know the outcome of that 2-day session.
If you could, yeah, excellent. Brilliant. Ben, had your hand up. Oh, sorry, John, did you have something else?
I was going to say, to compound that and to conclude that, we're in a period of fiscal discipline. So you've got to balance, well, you can't just go out and spend, you know, money that's not there. So yeah, I'll pause there.
But it's an element that's very true for lots of people right now, is that the wallets are tight and pockets are less deep. So you've got to balance that with the excitement of what you need to do as well, and the product drive. Absolutely. Benjamin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the discussion. There's so many interesting points that were raised. Towards that latest one, like, it's definitely key that you always want to try and have into perspective, like both your product roadmap, how you can deliver on that, and at the same time the realistic of the technical. I found that towards that, what we mentioned a bit earlier of like trying to bring your engineers as part of that roadmap, have them well aware of it, makes a lot of the time makes it easier. Like they can have that reasoning as well, like around understanding when is the best time to do kind of like shift to new technologies, or like how is the best way to approach it. One of the things that you mentioned that was really interesting to me was you mentioned like how to get some alignment when you have like different technologies being explored in different places. That's something we've seen a few places. One thing I've seen that worked quite well is having kind of, when you have teams that are distributed, having, I said Spotify called it guilds at one point, this kind of idea of having cross-team kind of discussion around technology. We've had it where one of the team would say, hey, we're exploring with this, we'll share it with everybody that uses the same technology. And then you can have a discussion around, okay, what are we doing with this? Is this a shift that we want to do globally? Is this just an experiment? We'll keep it contained. Okay, it's an experiment. We'll get back your results in 2 months, and then we can make a decision if we shift it across. And that allows people within the same technology circle to start coordinating and aligning and making decisions across the company. So if you have a way to kind of facilitate and encourage those types of discussion, it has a tendency to help those kind of problem with alignment by making sure that knowledge is shared.
Awesome, thank you, Ben. Go on, Nicole, back to you.
I just wanted to quickly add like a big tip on this, like escape go for the team when they have like these crazy ideas. Something that has worked a lot, like really good in my teams is like having 1 day a month for just like letting them go wild. So it's kind of a hackathon day where they can just go and go crazy basically. And that has helped like bring even like new features in our application. So that's really nice to see also team exploring other topics.
With that hacker day, do you tend to give some guide rails around what to explore? Does it have to be to do with the company like goals, or is it complete free reign?
We have it in 2 formats, like we have like 1 month and 1 month. So 1 month is more landed on the OKRs that we have, like what do we want to do, yada, yada, yada. We do brainstorming and we do that. But the other month is basically just go wild. It just needs to be related to what we're doing and just go wild, whatever you want to do. So it's actually really interesting to see people being interested in different technologies, and also helps to like see where the interest is in the team.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from anyone else? Or Ben, go on.
Yeah, just one on that idea of having like a once a month or something like that, like a day to do anything or personal development. Like 100%. I've seen in the team that I've worked on recently, they have 1 afternoon a week. That is, they call it back to school, literally anything as long as it has to do with learning something or personal development. And then once every 2 months or so, there is a 1-day hackathon. There's been some really interesting thing, completely unrelated to, like, one of the recent one was they implemented a Slack bot. They just wanted to know a bit more about technology and implemented a Slack bot to share kudos and thank yous to other people in the team. And that created a really nice kind of cultural thing of people sharing love and appreciation with one another. And that just came out of just something that 2 people wanted to do. So I highly recommend that. It creates really good atmosphere and really good excitement within the teams.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. We're going to go a bit more technical now. One of the questions, it comes from trying to find optimum ways of working when going through scale. And the particular question is how to resolve growing dependencies when scaling and reduce collaboration friction. So as you scale both software and of teams, how can you help resolve growing dependencies? Thank you, Ben.
I could go. I'm reading this, especially the like kind of increased dependencies as you scale, as one of the problems was faced in one of my teams recently, which was around modularization efforts, trying to keep a larger and growing code base modularized and specifically understanding the impact of that. The first attempt was just developers themselves saying, hey, we need to modularize to keep things a little bit more efficient. And it was just kind of done without much planning thought. And it ended up being extremely complex to resolve dependencies and understanding when you're touching something, what is impacted. And to simplify that, we actually introduced a little bit of process and a little bit of standardization. We kind of ended up with like 3 classes of modules, and certain types are allowed to depend on others and others cannot and have to live on their own. And this idea of like introducing certain rules for how modules interact with one another, has been quite successful at simplifying the graph a lot. And so now it's a lot simpler to understand if you're touching a specific module, what is impacted, is this a safe one? And you have a collection of kind of more internal modules and some that are more marked as like API. And so you know that when you're working within your team, as long as you don't touch an API one, go ham. You don't have any issues. You can work in total like autonomy. And it's only when you start touching to like kind of more front-facing ones that you need to be a bit more careful. So one way that I've seen it, but it's definitely a challenge that happens time and time again.
Nicole.
Just wanted to add, like, we actually had some discussions around this, and I'm seeing the dependencies not only internally on the team and APIs and everything that we have, but also the dependencies on the side of the stakeholders. I think that's another topic that I have found like even more complicated to resolve than the sense of the backend standardization, because then when we have code styles, we have automation checks, we have a lot of things that ensure that what we're writing kind of work. I think that I would be more interested in hearing, like, is there any trick that you have around like this kind of stakeholder communication? And I go back to communication.
Just a quick clarification. When you mean stakeholder, are you talking about like stakeholder in terms of like people owning kind of requests for change coming in, or are you talking about ownership of specific parts of the code base as you scale?
Kind of both. Like we have like our internal clients and we have our like owners of different parts of the thing. It's basically when you have all these moving pieces that are not totally under your control, basically.
Yeah, so the ownership part is actually one that we're still trying to solve. That is like a big problem, especially as you scale up, especially if you have kind of segmented teams where you have teams aligned with your different product segments. All of those people are touching similar code base and things pop up, things come back. And what we realize is after a while, you end up with pieces of code that are completely unearned, as in you might have multiple teams collaborating on it, but you don't know who's responsible for overall maintenance. People only touch it when there's product requirements, but they don't do maintenance and things can fall on the wayside. We've introduced a strict process on that where basically every piece of code needs to have ownership. We're using GitHub Actions and we have a owner file within every single module and it has to be defined. We basically went through the whole code base and assigned people based on contribution and things like that. We had extensive discussions to resolve some of the conflicts that popped up. But from now on, whenever something is introduced, be it external dependency, internal creation of module, new library that is required, an owner has to be defined before the work even starts. And if a team cannot sustain the maintenance of that, then they can't introduce something new. They may ask for another team if they can have bandwidth to maintain it. But basically, you have all of those discussions that need to happen before the work starts. And that has solved a lot of problem because now if a piece of work starts working, then that's not a problem. And you have to be quite strict because if you don't, what happens is someone starts developing something because they need it, but they don't want to own it. And then after they've done, they abandon it. And then you have this false fallacy. You can't deprecate it anymore because like, oh, we spent 3 months building this. You know, there's so much effort, we can't kill it. So no, it's like, if you don't have a plan for maintenance and ownership, you're not allowed to build it. And it was a little bit tough to make it pass, but with that in place, it's simplified a lot, those discussions.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to move back on to another question from the agenda, the original ones posed. And the question is, what are the challenges in securing APIs for mobile applications? And what strategies can be employed to improve API security and protect sensitive data? We've spoken a lot around about excitement of new stuff coming in, the commercial side of it, but this is more around security, securing APIs. Yeah, what are people's thoughts? Thanks, John.
Welcome. Better than silence. So something we've done in the past and what I'm looking to do here at Solar Protect as we start to move towards a more API-led architecture. Of course, security is high up on the agenda, obviously because of the nature of our business. We're heavily wedded into Azure, so things like the APIM and then the identity manager. So there's a few out there, Okta, Auth0, but you've also got Azure B2C as well, and they're effectively, in addition to a couple of other things, but essentially they're the two main ones that we will use as fundamentals for our security. Of course, you've got JWT with the tokens and that, but if you use an IDP, something like APIM, and then start configuring something like your gateway, your firewall, and it can't 100% protect against brute force, but we'll go some way towards that.
What was it that made you make the final decision to go down the Azure route, and how long has it been taking to sort of implement it?
They already had Azure here when I joined Solar Protect, but obviously I spent 25 years in the Microsoft space, so you could argue I'm biased towards Microsoft. Worked in the Microsoft arena. It's just where I was before for a more, we're an SME at Solar Protect, but where I was previously, it's more enterprise scale, corporate company, and the Azure piece with the WAF and the gateway and APM, etc. It works really well. They used Auth0 there, which has since been acquired by Okta. That was very good. And then I moved to a company in and around London, a smaller company, and they used Azure B2C. And Azure B2C for them also worked very well from an IDP perspective. And then we started to phase in, within some capacity, some DevSecOps into our CI/CD, just so that we can raise our awareness around potential security vulnerabilities using the shift left mentality earlier on in the cycle, as opposed to relying on external providers with pen testing and so on. But that goes in addition to around the general security, not just of APIs, but in terms of your solution and service offering.
That sounds like that's a nice solution for you. But what, I guess, on the other side of it, if you didn't have that in place, what would be the main gotchas or red flags that you could see that would show that you've got challenges when securing them?
If we didn't have any of those, it's a good question. It's more looking inward from our development team, relying on their awareness around the potential vulnerabilities, largely. And again, it's continual education around security and what security protocols. It's just a continual cycle of education because it's forever changing and has changed.
Excellent, thank you. Benjamin.
Yeah, absolute resonance with me on this idea of like shifting left and having continuous education. Like the best thing you can do for security is making sure that everybody in your team is as educated as possible and as aware, because as you said, like if you don't have it, red flags, they don't exist. It's very difficult, and usually you notice when it's too late and things have gone really, really bad. One of the things that you mentioned on anything that has to do with like API or if you are dealing with like payments or things like that, like fully agree on you. If there is existing solutions, it's probably better for you to rely on existing things rather than reinventing the wheel. It's very complex, particularly like payment systems, unless you're a pretty large company that has the means to really put a lot of effort behind it. There's no reason, like go with an existing provider that is going to make it so much simpler and so much secure. One of the things that I wanted to bring to this discussion, because we talk about security, one of the things on mobile that is actually probably even more common than like particularly API or things like that is dependencies. And one of the things that is really key is to make sure you have a process for introducing third-party dependencies in your app. It's very easy for people to just add something because it's provided by a partner for some whatever reason, and it introduced huge liability and huge security issues. We've seen it with marketing wanting to add in some analytics to track user behavior, and add the SDK, plop it in, it's super easy. And the dev team is like, cool, it's like a couple of nine, I'll do it. Yeah, the SDK is recording the user's phone while they're inputting data and sending that to a third-party website. And you're an app that deals with payment and credit card information. Well, good luck. You've now really screwed yourself and you're in a terrible position. So having visibility on third-party SDK coming into your app, finding a way to validate it. The current team that I'm working on, we have a mobile enablement team that is there to support the teams, build automation, work on CI pipelines, everything that has to do with supporting them. And that team is now also responsible for incoming SDK requests. And we have a validation process. We go over it. What are they doing? Are they introducing any potential security risks? And then we basically green stamp them before it is allowed to go into production. So yeah, just wanted to add, think of SDKs and external dependencies as part of your security kind of outlook.
How would you say, like, track the visibility of it? What's a good strategy to do that? Of all these things, if all of these are coming, if you've got a big mobile dev team and you've got lots of stakeholders requesting lots of things, have you got a strategy that can help keep an eye on them?
So it's communication with the teams, making them know that if you're adding a dependency, I mean, you don't add a dependency by mistake. Like, it's a conscious decision. So as long as they know that when that happens, it has to be validated ahead of time, then it's pretty easy to keep track of those. And then as for how you evaluate them, it depends on your risk assessment, where you are as a company, what type of data you're having a look at. If you're just doing some very simple things, you can probably be a lot more relaxed on your security assessment than if you're dealing with more sensitive information. So I guess it depends.
I imagine it comes down to empowering the right people to make those decisions as well, because as a CTO, you're not unable, you can't be the gatekeeper for everything going in. So you need to make sure that your engineering managers, the principal engineers are all aware of those stuff and empowering them to be able to make that decision as well.
Yeah, it is. It's also important to have, like, whenever you have process and things like that, to have ways to bypass it. Like, I mean, we've had it where, okay, we don't have the time to go for the full review and you have to push it through. But at that point, you can make it a decision. It's like, as a product manager, I need to launch this really fast. I'm accepting this is the risk assessment that we have. If something goes wrong, I know how to pivot, how to turn it off, or things like that. So it's all about, I guess, distributing accountability. Like, as long as you have people that are able to understand the decision they're making and be accountable for them, then you can move forward without having a bottleneck with, like, a single person evaluating everything.
Great, thank you. Right, we've got 15 minutes left. I wanted to try something. As part of the sign up, one of the questions asked was, what's the #1 challenge faced in the engineering department, you know, specifically around growing mobile teams? I just wanted to go around as many people who are present and able to talk and ask that. John, I'm going to start with you just because you did answer this. So if you can't remember, I can read what you wrote. But what is your #1 challenge faced in the engineering department right now in terms of, like, mobile growing pains?
Can't remember what I put. There's so many.
Yeah.
#1. Okay, yeah. It is, for us, it's the technical landscape that we're on. That's restricting us from growing, because without addressing that, we seem to be hitting too many bottlenecks.
Interesting. That was different to your answer, but it was still a very good one. So technical landscape that restricts our growth. Excellent. If you're interested, your answer was fiscal discipline and technical debt. Well, I'll add that to it as well.
Yeah.
An equal problem.
pick one of many.
Yes, exactly. Stephen Rooke, what's your #1 challenge?
Up until 6 months ago, it would have probably been attracting talent. But since I've swapped all my teams around and making use of, you know, plain old React devs, that's sort of gone away now. So now it would be making sure that people engage with like a community of practice and are feeding back into and sharing lessons learnt. You know, that's still in its infancy rather than you know, a well-established, well-oiled machine.
Excellent. Right. Would you say the talent thing, is that just because you're not particularly looking at the minute, or you feel that the market's...
The market's changed.
Yep.
Yeah, like I'm being sent CVs now speculatively, whereas before I was having to go chase. You know, there's a lot more people available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Qaiser, I don't know if you're still there, if you're able to, what's your #1 challenge?
Hey, I'm still here. I think my #1 challenge is, whilst talent has started to come in and we have been getting CVs, you know, there are still there's a wide range of actual skill, and so having to filter through that, and there is now lots of talent that's on the cards, and we're a relatively small team, and having to filter through all of that and just make sure we're finding people that are right fit and are able to you know, contribute well to the team. You know, on a small team, when you add one person, you know, that's a massive percentage increase in either help or drag. So yeah, that's always a challenge, just finding the right people and making sure that we are not you know, blowing up our team by trying to grow too quickly.
Yeah, of course. Excellent. Thank you. How about Attila? I don't know if you're able to talk, but do you have a challenge you'd like to bring to the group? Nope, not a problem. Nicole, I know you can probably give me one.
Sure. I also don't remember what I wrote, and there are a lot of them. But yeah,
I've got yours here as well. If you, I'll this is a test to see whether
it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. I think I'm resonating a lot with what I was mentioning at the beginning as well, like having someone that fits the profile of this new changing requirements of having mobile people doing several things as well. It's something that it's become a tough situation. Now, as with the things that change, there are a lot of people around, but it's also like finding that specific profile that you're looking for. It's not as easy as it seems.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. By the way, your answer was burnout and motivation, which is again
That too.
Yes.
That too.
We'll try another one. Sam Beadle. I don't know if you're there or able to comment.
Sorry, what's the question? I have been listening in the background.
No, that's okay. The #1 challenge facing around mobile growth, mobile teams and growth.
I think it's for us, obviously, we have so native iOS and Android, making sure that they're feature paired, making sure that it's the same. Historically, Android have always worked off iOS designs. Obviously, there are inherent problems there, mainly because we don't actually have a product design team because we're still a startup company. And then also considering how to reduce the amount of development time required to build out something that has a back-end dependency. So in our case, we are considering KMM as a solution. Going to try out that path to see what happens. We know it's still in beta. I can see some of you laughing, and they are the main challenges, really, like feature pairing and also like accommodating for what native Android users would expect in a native Android app as compared to an iOS app. The best example being the back button. Android just has at the bottom of their phone a back button. If you're an iOS user, you're used to like top left or just the swipe gesture. So it's like, do you include that in your designs, or do you just allow for that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm repeating stuff that someone else has said.
No, it's actually all new. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks. That was awesome. Zaidun, is that how you pronounce your name? Sorry.
Yes. So there's a lot of challenges in my team. The first one is finding the right people, since we are using Flutter for our app. It's so difficult to find engineers, developer for that, especially QA with also with the Flutter knowledge, since we are keeping all the code in the same code base. The second challenge using Flutter, that sometimes finding the right tools with the Flutter SDK or Flutter support. And the third challenge is, even if you have a great team and you are delivering great results, all people that are interacting with the mobile team from so we have a shopping app in the e-commerce in Germany, and you have to find the balance between web and app. So in terms of campaign, content, and all this stuff, it's not a direct challenge for us technically, but it has an impact on and the end result or the vision of the app inside the company. Are you mobile first or web first? And so this is also a challenge. I think those three I can share.
No, that's great. Thank you. That's really useful. Like specific, like to Flutter problems. I'm sure that's the same with other cross-platform technologies as well, but yours around specifically around Flutter. And yeah, that balance between web and app, and whether it's mobile first or web first. And I think that definitely goes into like the growing of mobile teams as well, because how much do you invest into the growth of mobile if it's secondary or an afterthought? I think it was Stephen that mentioned like the afterthought, it's a second-hand thought for mobile as well. Raises interesting points. Brilliant, thank you. So that's like a whole range of challenges that we're facing. A lot around recruitment and finding the right profile with the flood of the market, even though previously it was difficult to find one. Now with, I imagine, the layoffs that have been happening around, I mean, you just looked on LinkedIn and there's a new one happening, but there's a flood and filtering through and getting the right people. Talks around sort of burnout, motivation, feature parity, around growth. Awesome. Thank you. Lots and lots of problems. Is there any questions that anyone has? Open up the floor that people want to ask. With 5 minutes remaining, yeah. Any burning questions? Not one. I've got a little one in my back pocket just in case. Yeah, go on, Sam.
I didn't put my hand up and David beat me to it. So
Okay, go on then, David. Yes, please. You'll be next, Sam.
I think it's from my perspective. Hi, I'm David. I'm head of software at a company called Vino Solutions. We build B2B appliances with mobile kind of app components in it. But one of the challenges that we're finding is kind of troubleshooting and diagnosis of when something goes wrong, and with regards to the growth of how do we spend proportionally less time on diagnosing single problems with our devices, our applications running on those devices, while we are growing our customer base. If anybody has any kind of experience or insight into strategies into that, that would be very interesting to hear.
Great question. Thank you, David.
I can share, sorry, I can share that normally what we tend to do is try to get as much data as we can. And that's like adding as much, getting as much information as possible, of course, like taking into account all the rules around it in order to build our user journey in different parts of the flow. That has helped us pinpoint several issues. And another one is that we also take care that every other month we go around and update all our dependencies. Like we make sure that our libraries and everything that we have are not updated, because that one is a big source of this kind of headaches that just appear out of nowhere, especially with newer devices, yada, yada, yada. I highly, highly recommend doing that. Like just part of our hacker day is also like making sure that those things are up and we just create tickets for ourselves. Don't that we squash them all there, but we also have a weekly meeting that is just front-end specific where we discuss these topics. Like you will find vulnerability, we find like ongoing crash or things that are happening. This is our space to discuss and try to fix it together if we haven't been able to fix it alone. Yeah, basically that's kind of it. Like just track it and update your things, and it should go away most of the times.
Thanks, Nicole. Go on, Ben.
Yeah, just one of a small note, because I think you mentioned that it's also on like connected devices. We've worked with that a bit in the past. Like one of the really key thing that we found is making it as easy as possible for everyone in your development team to have access to those devices and work with them as much as possible. Whenever you end up with people working on alternate hardware or on emulation devices, and not having the ability to work with the real devices throughout the development process, it's a lot easier for having to things slip through the cracks. If they're working on a daily basis with like the as close to possible, and obviously, especially when you launch a new thing, you have new revision of boards coming in and new things that's going to change. But keeping that as updated as possible, making sure that they have a good way of building and testing things has a huge impact. And it has meant sometimes we spent literally like a couple of months at the beginning of the project making sure that we have a proper build pipeline, a proper way of distributing builds. We worked on like connected devices, which was like an Android board running on a TV frame. We needed ways for people to have that. And if we couldn't, the device was too big, we had people that were remote having a way to like VPN onto the company network and then have a camera. Literally, we had a webcam pointed at the wall, and they would be able to push builds onto it and test it remotely. So, sorry, my camera just went wild. But yeah, as long as you can find a way for making your dev team work on real hardware, it's going to help a lot with reducing potential errors.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. And that is all we've got time for. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along, participating. I found it very interesting and I really, really appreciate it. I believe the recording is going to be available for the next 48 hours. And Jess, who's on this call, is also going to be doing a follow-up. Any feedback you can give on it, whether you enjoyed it, whether there's any recommendations of what you'd like to cover in another topic, that would be awesome. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I've really enjoyed that. Hope you have a lovely rest of your afternoon.